Rorschach's Journal, October 12th, 1985. Dog carcass in alley this morning. Tire tread on bare stomach. This city is afraid of me. I've seen its true face. The streets are extended gutters, and the gutters are full of blood, and when the drains finally scab over, all the vermin will drown. The accumulated filth and all their sex and murder will foam up about their waists, and all the whores and politicians will look up and shout, "Save us," and I'll look down and whisper, "No." They had a choice, all of them. They could have followed in the footsteps of good men like my father or President Truman, decent men who believed in a day's work for a day's pay. Instead, they followed the droppings of lechers and communists and didn't realize that the trail led over a precipice until it was too late. Don't tell me they didn't have a choice. Now the whole world stands on the brink, staring down into bloody hell, all those liberals and intellectuals and smooth talkers, and all of a sudden nobody can think of anything to say. That's quite a drop. Yeah, poor guy, I always wonder, do you think you black out before you hit the sidewalk or what? Frankly, I don't need to know that bad. What do you think happened here? Well, looks like someone broke in by busting this door down. That would take either two guys or one guy on serious drugs, because the door had a chain fastened on the inside, which means that the occupant was home when it happened. I saw the body, and he looked beefy enough to protect himself. For a guy's age, he was in terrific shape. What, you mean apart from being dead? No. I mean, the guy, this Blake guy, the occupant, he had muscles like a weightlifter. He would have put up some kind of fight, I'm certain. Yeah, well, it looks like he lost. Maybe it was a couple of guys and they just overpowered him. Maybe. The data we have suggests he's been doing some sort of overseas diplomatic work for years. A lot of classy expense account living. Maybe he just got soft. You don't look too soft in this photograph. Wonder how he got that scar. It looks... Hey, the guy he's shaking hands with in the picture, it's Vice President Ford. Hey, so it is. Well, listen, between you and me, I think we can rule him out as a suspect. A job like this just isn't his style. That'd be real funny if we had any better leads to go on. I mean, what is this? A little money got stolen, but no way is this a straight burglary. Somebody really had it in for this guy. I mean, how did he go out of the window? Maybe he tripped against it. Forget it. That's strong glass, man. You trip against it. Even a big guy like that, it don't break. I think you'd have to be thrown. Well, if this Edward Blake was as big as you say he was, then one guy would never lift him. So we're talking two assailants here. Which floor you want? Oh, ground floor, please. Ground floor coming up. Hey, comics, only thing I had when I was a kid. Thanks, Grid. Aldridge. Appreciate the support. So, look, you haven't answered my question. Is this a burglary or do we look for some other motive? Listen, it could just have been a burglary. Maybe a bunch of knot tops on KT28 or Ludes. You know how it is, a lot of crazy things happen in a city this size. They don't all need motives. So what you're saying is, I'm saying let's not raise too much dust over this one. We don't need any masked Avengers getting interested in cutting in. Follow it up discreetly, sure, but in public. Well, let's say we let this one drop out of sight. I don't know, I think you take this vigilante stuff too seriously since the Keane Act was passed in 77. Only the government-sponsored weirdos are active. They don't interfere. Screw them. What about Rorschach? Rorschach never retired, even after him and his buddies fell out of grace. Rorschach's still out there somewhere. He's crazier than a snake's armpit and wanted on 2 counts, murder 1. We got a cozy little homicide here. If he gets involved, we'll be up to our butts in corpses. I did exactly the same. Thank you, Greg Woodridge. What's the matter? Nothing, just a shiver. Must be getting a cold. I might not get to see this again, but follow your dreams as they are your passion future. Thank you, Hayden Duckworth. That's very kind of you. Really appreciate the support. Likewise, friend. At midnight, all the agents. Yeah. So there I was in the supermarket buying dog food for old Phantom here. I turn the corner of the aisle and wham, I bump into the screaming skull. You remember him? I think I heard you mention him. Oh, I put him away a dozen times in the 40s, but he reformed and turned into Jesus since then. Got married, got 2 kids. We traded addresses. Nice guy. Hollis, listen, it's almost midnight. I ought to go. Oh, sure. Lost track of the time there, talking about all that old stuff. You must have been bored as hell. You know better than that. These Saturday night beer sessions are what keep me going. Well, us old retired guys gotta stick together. Let me put this out and I'll be right with you. You know, it was a crying shame they put you youngsters out to grass in 77. You were a better night owl than I ever was. Exactly, your dreams in books take you to an incredible place. That's very true. Greg Aldridge, thank you for the support. I really appreciate it. Hollis, we both know that's bullshit, but thanks anyway. Hey, watch the language. This is the left hook that floored Captain Axis, remember? How could I forget? Thanks for another great night, Hollis. Take care of yourself. You too, Danny. God bless. Look down your back stairs, buddy. Somebody's living there and they don't really feel the weather. Flop, 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 lip. Hello, Daniel. Got hungry, waiting. Help myself to some beans. Hope you don't mind. Rorschach. That is no. No, of course I don't mind. Do you want me to heat those up for you or anything? No need. Fine like this. So, long time no see. How have you been keeping?
Excuse me, darling.
Yeah.
I was going to say good night.
Good night.
Feeling better?
I am.
And you want to go tomorrow?
I
I'm
do.
not worried.
I do. I'm all right.
Yeah. Oh, you're doing good.
Yeah, I'm doing a thing.
Yeah. You're reading it through the
Oh,
link.
it's live.
Okay.
That's okay.
Da, 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 da,
Um. So long. Um. So long time no see. How have you been keeping? Out of prison so far. Take a look at this. What is it? This little stain, is that bean juice or? That's right, human bean juice, haha. Badge belonged to the comedian. Blood too. He's dead. Dead. What, you're talking about the comedian? Investigated a routine homicide. Victim named Edward Blake. How many various tasks you do? Yeah, do you know Jordan Schlansky? That's what I based the YouTube name on. He's okay, man. Reading a good book. Yeah, yeah. Mum said hi. She's deaf, so she didn't know I was doing this, but she's awesome. How many various tasks do I do? I don't know. A few. If you do a few tasks, yeah. How about yourselves? How many tasks do you do? Okay. Dad, what are you talking about? The comedian investigated a routine homicide victim named Edward Blake. Found the Dad, what are you talking about? The comedian investigated a routine homicide victim named Edward Blake. Found the costume in Blake's wardrobe. Seems he was the comedian. Somebody threw him out of a window. Somebody, listen, maybe we could talk about this down in my workshop. I feel kind of exposed up here. Also, that way you can use the hidden rear exit when you leave, that is. Right down this way. You haven't been down here for a while. Neither have you. A lot of dust. Yeah, well, sometimes I come and sit down here for a while. But there doesn't seem much point since I retired. Listen, about the comedian. Might it just have been an ordinary burglary or something? Maybe the killer didn't know who Blake was. And an ordinary burglar killed a comedian. Ridiculous. I guess it doesn't seem very likely. I heard he'd been working for the government since 77, knocking over Marxist republics in South America. Maybe this was a political killing. Maybe. Or maybe someone's picking off costumed heroes. Don't you think that's maybe a little paranoid? That's what they're saying about me now, that I'm paranoid. Comedian was active for 40 years. Men make a lot of enemies in that time. How's your friend Hollis Mason these days? Hollis? What is he? They were both Minutemen. When Blake was 16 and Mason was the first night owl. That book Mason wrote, he said some bad things about the comedian in it. Rorschach, I don't like what you're implying here. Hollis is an old man. If you're thinking about going over there and scaring him, implying nothing, just an observation. Anyway, thought I'd let you know. Somebody's gunning for masks. Yeah, the tunnel brings you out in a warehouse 2 blocks north. Better go now, things to do. Yes, I remember. Used to come here often, back when we were partners. Oh, yeah, those were great times, Rorschach. Great times. Whatever happened to them? You quit. Rorschach's Journal, October 13th, 1985. Slept all day. Awoken at 4:37. Landlady complaining about smell. She has 5 children by 5 different fathers. I am sure she cheats on welfare. Soon it will be dark. Beneath me, this awful city. It screams like an abattoir full of retarded children. New York. On Friday night, a comedian died in New York. Somebody knows why down there. Somebody knows. The dusk reeks of fornication and bad consciences. I believe I shall take my exercise. Roll, Rorschach. How you doing, fella? I'm fine, Happy Harry. Yourself? Fine, I'm fine. I'm fine. Fine, I'm fine. And I'm glad you're fine too. Oh God, please don't kill anybody. Guy went sidewalk diving Friday night. I don't think he was alone when it happened. Name was Edward Blake, friend of mine. Hey, you hear that? He's got friends. He must have changed his deodorant. Steve, for God's sake, man, shut up. I gotta take a leak. Hey, I didn't mean anything. I haven't been in the apple too long, and hey, what? I've just broken this gentleman's little finger. Who killed Edward Blake? Yeah. And his index finger. Who killed Edward Blake? Please, we don't know. Oh God, man, leave him alone. First visit of evening. Fruitless. Nobody knew anything. Feel slightly depressed. The city is dying of rabies. Is the best I can do to wipe random flecks of foam from its lips. Never despair, never surrender. I leave the human cockroaches to discuss their heroin and child pornography. I have business elsewhere. We have a better class of person. Canadian dead. But why? Greg Wooldridge When I was young, we cleaned up Grandma's farmhouse. I found hundreds of comic books from the 40s to the 70s. There was no television then. Cool. I think there's a lot of screen time nowadays. So I think, hey, you probably grew up. The comedian dead, but why? You were always supposed to be the world's smartest man, Vet. You tell me. I never claimed to be anybody special, Rorschach. I just have some over-enthusiastic PR men. Listen, could it have been a political killing? Maybe the Soviets? Dryberg said same thing. Don't believe it. America has Dr. Manhattan. Reds have been running scared since 65. They'd never dare antagonize us. I think we've got a mask killer. Not necessarily. The comedian had plenty of other political enemies to choose from, even discounting the Russians. The man was practically a Nazi. He stood up for his country, Vet. He never let anybody retire him, never cashed in on his reputation, never set up a company selling posters and diet books and toy soldiers based on himself, never became a prostitute. If that makes him a Nazi, you might as well call me a Nazi too. Rorschach, I know we were never friends, but even so, you're being unfair. Nobody retired me. I chose to quit. Adventuring and go public 2 years before the police strike made the Keene Act necessary. Yes, good timing. I came here to warn you about the mask killer, so you didn't end up smartest man in the morgue. But I guess there's worse things to end up as. Be seeing you. Sure, have a nice day. Rorschach's Journal, October 13th, 1985, 8:30 p.m. Rockefeller Military Research Center. Meeting with vet. Left bad taste in mouth. Sorry. I have to go to bed. Good luck, son. Thank you. Thank you, Gred Waldridge. Really appreciate the support and kindness. Sweet dreams. Cheers. Meeting with vet. Left bad taste in mouth. He is pampered and decadent, betraying even his own shallow liberal affections. Possibly homosexual. Must remember to investigate further. Dryberg is bad. A flabby failure who sits whimpering in his basement. Why are so few of us left active, healthy, and without personality disorders? The first night owl runs an auto repair shop. The first silk spectre is a bloated aging whore dying in a Californian rest resort. Captain Metropolis was decapitated in a car crash back in 1974. Mothman's in an asylum up in Maine. The Silhouette retired in disgrace, murdered 6 weeks later by a minor adversary seeking revenge. Dollar Bill got shot. Hooded Justice went missing in 1955. The comedian is dead. Only 2 names remaining on my list. Both share private quarters at Rockefeller Military Research Center. I shall go to them. I shall go and tell the indestructible man that someone plans to murder him. Good evening, Rorschach. Good evening, Dr. Manhattan. What are you doing here, Rorschach? This is a government base, and I hear you're wanted by the police. Good evening, Miss Jupiter. That's just check, Jupiter. That's Juspekek. Jupiter was just a name my mother assumed because she didn't want anyone to know she was Polish. You haven't answered my question. Apologies. Came to warn you both and bring bad news. The comedian is dead. Yes, since he and I are the only two extra normal operatives currently employed by the government, I was informed on Saturday morning. I understand the CIA suspects the Libyans were responsible. Have my own theories on that. Take it you're not too concerned about Blake's death. A live body and a dead body contain the same number of particles. Structurally, there's no discernible difference. Life and death are unquantifiable abstracts. Why should I be concerned? Anyway, it couldn't have happened to a nicer person. Blake was a bastard. He was a monster. You know, he tried to rape my mother back when they were both Minutemen. So you support the allegations made in Hollis Mason's book concerning Blake? What Mason said in Under the Hood is what happened. God knows I'm not my mother's biggest admirer, but something shouldn't happen to anybody. Why do you think Blake never sued Mason? Crunch, crunch. I'm not here to speculate on the moral lapses of men who died in their country's service. I came to warn moral lapses. Rape is a moral lapse. You know he broke her ribs. You know he almost choked her. John, get this creep out of here. You seem to be upsetting Laurie. I think you ought to go. With respect, Dr. Manhattan. I warned Vet and Dreyberg, and I intend to warn you and your lady friend. I believe someone is eliminating masked adventurers, possibly some old foe with a grudge, I believe. I said I think you ought to go. Spent a lot of time getting in to see you. Sorry. Not leaving before I've had my say. Sorry. He's gone. Are you still upset? Yeah, I just don't like Rorschach. He's sick inside his mind. I don't like the way he smells or that horrible monotone voice or anything. The sooner the police put him away, the better. John? Yes, Laurie? I was just thinking that I must be really edgy to let a maggot like Rorschach get to me like that. I just feel cooped up sometimes. Maybe I could use a night out. You know, Rorschach mentioned Dan Dreyberg. We haven't seen Dan in years. Maybe I'll call him up, ask him out to dinner. If you don't mind, that is. Of course not. I'd join you, but I think I'm close to locating a gluino, which would completely validate super symmetrical theory if we could include it in the bestiary. That's fascinating. I'll call Dan. Hello, Dan? Laurie Juspekiak. I'm fine. How are you? Great. Listen, I just remembered I hadn't seen you in ages and wondered if we could have dinner sometime. Well, how about tonight? Raphael's at 9:30. That's terrific. John? Oh, yeah. Yeah, John's in pretty good shape. See you later, Dan. Bye. Rorschach's Journal, October 13th, 1985, 11:30 p.m. On Friday night, a comedian died in New York. Someone threw him out of a window, and when he hit the sidewalk, his head was driven up into his stomach. Nobody cares. Nobody cares but me. Are they right? Is it futile? Soon there will be war. Millions will burn. Millions will perish in sickness and misery. Why does one death matter against so many? Because there is good and there is evil, and evil must be punished. Even in the face of Armageddon, I shall not compromise in this. But There are so many deserving of retribution, and there is so little time. Well, I guess it's getting pretty late. It's been a great evening, Laurie. You sure you won't let me pick up the tab? Nah, if I'm gonna be a kept woman for the military's secret weapon, then the military can stand me a bowl of spaghetti africani every once in a while. Hey, you sound bitter. No, not really. It's just the only reason I'm kept around is to keep John relaxed and happy. Is everything okay with you and John? Me and John? Yeah, everything's fine. Couldn't be better. It's just I keep thinking I'm 35. What have I done? I've spent 8 years in semi-retirement, preceded by 10 years running around in the stupid costume because my stupid mother wanted me to. You remember that costume? God, yes, dreadful. With that stupid little short skirt and the neckline going down to my navel. God, that was so dreadful. You know, when I think back, why did we do it? Why do we dress up like that? Yeah, you're probably right. The Keen Act was the best thing that ever happened to us. Hey, you remember that guy? The one who pretended to be a supervillain so he could get beaten up? Oh, you mean Captain Carnage? Ha ha ha, he was one for the books. You're telling me. I remember I caught him coming out of the drawers. I didn't know what his racket was. I started hitting him and I think, geez, he's breathing funny. Does he have asthma? Ha ha ha. He tried that with me, only I'd heard about him, so I just walked away. Ha ha ha. He follows me down the street, broad daylight, right? He's saying, punish me. I'm saying, no, get lost. Whatever happened to him? Well, he pulled it on Rorschach, and Rorschach dropped him down an elevator shaft. No, I guess it's not. Oh, God, I'm sorry, that isn't funny. Well, what do you expect? Geez, you know, that felt good. There don't seem to be so many laughs around these days. The comedian is dead. At midnight, all the agents and superhumans and superhuman crew go out and round up everyone who knows more than they do. Bob Dylan. Under the Hood. We present here excerpts from Hollis Mason's autobiography, Under the Hood, leading up to the time when he became Masked Adventurer Night Owl, reprinted with permission of the author. 1. The lady who works in the grocery store at the corner of my block is called Denise, and she over the years she's written 42 romantic novels, none of which have ever reached the bookstores. I, however, have been fortunate enough to hear the plots of the last 27 of these recounted in installments by the authoress herself every time I drop by the store for a jar of coffee or a can of beans, and my respect for Denise's literary prowess knows no bounds. So natural enough, when I found myself faced with the daunting task of actually starting the book you now hold in your hands, it was Denise I turned to for advice. Listen, I said, I don't know from writing a book. I have all this stuff in my head that I want to get down, but what do I write about first? Where do I begin? Without looking up from the boxes of detergent to which she was fixing price tags, Denise graciously delivered up a pearl of her accumulated wisdom in the voice of bored but benign condescension. Being condescension. Start off with the saddest thing you can think of and get the audience's sympathies on your side. After that, believe me, it's a walk. Thank you, Denise. this book is dedicated to you because I don't know how to choose between all the other people I should be dedicating it to. The saddest thing I think of is the Ride of the Valkyries. Every time I hear it, I get depressed and start wondering about the lot of humanity and the unfairness of life and all those other things that you think about at 3 in the morning when your digestion won't let you sleep. Now I realize that nobody else on the planet has to brush away a tear when they hear that particular stirring refrain, but that's because they don't know about Mo Vernon. When my father upped and left my granddad's farm in Montana to bring his family to New York, Mo Vernon was the man he'd worked for. Vernon's Auto Repair was just off 7th Avenue, and although it was only 1928 when Dad started working there, there was just about enough trade for his wages to keep me and Mum and my sister Leantha in food and clothing. Dad was always really keen and enthusiastic about his work, and I used to think it was just because he had a thing about cars. Looking back, I can see it was more than that. It must have meant so much to him just to have a job and be able to support his family. He'd had a lot of arguments with his father about coming east rather than taking over the farm, like the old man had planned for him. And most of the rows that had ended with my grandfather predicting poverty and moral ruination for my dad and mum if they so much as set foot in New York, to be living the life that he himself had chosen and keeping his family above the poverty line in spite of his father's warnings must have meant more to my dad than anything in the world. But that's something I only understand now with hindsight. Back then, I just thought he was crazy for crankshafts. Hell, anyway, I was 12 years old when we left Montana, so during those next few years in the big city, I was just the age to appreciate the occasional trips to the auto shop with my dad, which is where I first set eyes on Mo Vernon, his employer. Mo Vernon was a man around 55 or so, and he had one of those old New York faces that you don't see anymore. It's funny, but certain faces seem to go in and out of style. You look at old photographs and everybody has a certain look to them. Almost as if they're related. Look at pictures from 10 years later and you can see that there's a new kind of face starting to predominate, and that the old faces are fading away and vanishing, never to be seen again. Mo Vernon's face was like that. 3 fins, a wise, arch, cynical curl to his lower lip, a certain hollowness around his eyes, hair retreating back across his head, attempting a rendezvous with the label of his shirt collar. Vernon's Auto Repair, Hollis Mason under the hood. Vernon's Auto Repair, C, 1928. My father, myself, aged 12. Mo Vernon, Fred Motts. I'd go into the shop with my dad and Mo. Mo would be sitting there in his office, which had glass sides, so he could watch the men working. Sometimes if my father wanted to check something out with Mo before going ahead with his work, he'd send me over to the office to do it for him, which meant that I got to see the insides of Mo's inner sanctum, or rather I got to hear them. You see, Mo was an opera buff. He had one of the new gramophones over in the corner of his office, and all day he used to play scratchy old 78 recordings of his favorites just as loud as he could manage. But today's standard, as loud as he could manage, didn't amount to a whole lot of noise, but it sounded pretty cacophonous back in 1930 when things were generally quieter. The other thing that was peculiar about Mo was his sense of humour, represented by all the stuff he used to keep in the top right side drawer of his desk. In that drawer, amongst a mess of rubber bands and paper clips and receipts and stuff, Mo had one of the largest collections of tasteless novelty items I had seen up until that point. Good night, or or have seen at any time since. They were all risk little toys and gadgets that Mo had picked up from gag shops or visits to Coney Island, but it was the sheer range of them that was overwhelming. Every cheap blue gimmick and an embarrassing one with every ballpoint pen with a girl on the side whose swimsuit vanished when you turn it upside down. Every salts and pepper cruet shaped like a woman's breast. Every plastic dog mess. Mo had the works. Every time somebody went into his office, he tried to style them by displaying his latest plaything. Actually, it used to shock my dad more than it did me. I don't think he liked the idea of his son being exposed to that kind of stuff, probably because of all the moral warnings my grandfather had impressed upon him. For my part, I wasn't offended. I even found it kind of funny, not the things themselves. Even by then, I was too old to get much amusement out of stuff like that. What I found funny was that for no apparent reason, a grown man should have a desk drawer full of such ludicrous devices. Anyway, one day in 1933, a little after my 17th birthday, I went over at Vernon's Auto and Repairs with Dad, helping him poke around in the oily innards of a busted-up Ford. Mo was in his office, and although we didn't find out till later, he was sitting wearing an artificial foam rubbed a set of realistically painted ladies' bosoms, with which he hoped to get a few laughs from the guy who brought him the morning mail through the front office when it arrived. While he waited, he was listening to Wagner. The mail arrived in due course, and the guy handing it over managed to raise a dutiful chuckle at Mo's generous cleavage before leaving to open and peruse the morning's missives. Amongst these, again, as we found out later, there was a letter from Mo's wife, Beatrice, informing him that for the past year she'd been sleeping with Fred Motts, the senior and most trusted mechanic employed at Vernon's Auto Repairs, who unusually hadn't shown up for work on that particular morning. This, according to the concluding paragraphs of the letter, was because Beatrice had taken all the money out of the joint account she shared with her husband and had departed with Fred for Tijuana. The first anyone in the workshop knew about this was when the door of Mo's office slammed open and the startlingly loud and crackling rendition of Ride of the Valkyries blasted out from within. Framed in the doorway with tears in his eyes and the crumpled letter in his hand, Mo stood dramatically with all eyes turned towards him. He was still wearing the set of artificial breasts, almost inaudible above the rising strains of Wagner swelling behind him. He spoke with so much hurt and outrage and offended dignity, fighting for possession of his voice, that the end result was almost toneless. Fred Motts has had carnal knowledge of my wife, Beatrice, for the past 2 years. He stood there in the wake of his announcement, the tears rolling down over his multiple chins to soak into the pink foam rubber of his bosom, making tiny sounds in his chest and and throat that were trampled under the hooves of the Valkyries and lost forever. And everybody started laughing. I don't know what it was. We could see he was crying, but it was just something in the toneless way he'd said it. Standing there wearing a pair of false breasts, with all that crashing trap and music soaring all around him. None of us could help but laughing at him like that. My dad and I were both doubled up, and the other guys slaving over the nearby cars were wiping tears from their eyes and smearing their faces with oil in the process. Mo just looked at us all for a minute and then went back into his office, closed the door. A moment or two later, the Wagner stopped with an ugly scraping noise as Mo snatched the needle from the groove of the gramophone record. And after that, there was silence. About half an hour passed before someone went in to apologize on behalf of everybody and to see if Mo was all right. Mo accepted the apology and said that he was fine. Apparently, he was sitting there at his desk, breasts now discarded, getting on with normal routine paperwork as if nothing happened. I graduated from Police Academy in 1938. That night he sent everybody home early. Then, running a tube from the exhaust of one of the shop's more operational vehicles in through the car's window, he started up the engine and drifted off into a final bit of sleep amongst the carbon monoxide fumes. His brother took over the business and eventually employed Fred Motz as chief mechanic. And that's why the ride of the Valkyries is the saddest thing I could think of, even though it's somebody else's tragedy rather than my own. I was there and I laughed along with all the rest, and I guess that makes it a part of my story too. Now, if Denise's theory is correct, I should have your full sympathy, and the rest will be a walk. So maybe it's safe to tell you about all the stuff you probably bought this book to read about. Maybe it's safe to tell you why I'm crazier than Mo Vernon ever was. I didn't have a drawer full of erotic novelties, but I guess I had my own individual quirks. And although I've never worn a set of false bosoms in my life, I've stood there dressed in something just